Hi, folks. I've unexpectedly found myself in Albuquerque, New Mexico, using a friend's gamer headset. This is a cool painting that his grandma did. Hello, my name is Xalavier Nelson Jr. I am a game developer with 14 years of experience. In the past 8, I have worked on over 90 games from indie to AAA in roles ranging from design to production to writing and beyond. I also run a studio called Strange Scaffold, which makes games like Space Warlord, Organ Trading Simulator, El Paso Elsewhere, and the upcoming horror fantasy kidnapping sim Life Eater, which comes out in about 11 days, terrifyingly. This talk is more of a plea because, excuse my hyperbole, it's a lightning talk, but the thinky game genre is facing a crisis of its own making. Essentially, thinky developers, especially early in their career, will play a game by Alan Hazelden or Jonathan Blow or Zachtronics, all three, some of the best to ever do it. And they come into thinky dev communities and we go, It's like the business card scene in American Psycho where someone says, perfect, refined design. And then someone goes up into a mountaintop, comes down after 5-10 years and says, I found another way to do Sokoban. And everyone looks at it and goes, yes, there's weaknesses here, but you've evolved the design. The primacy lives on. And everyone's nodding their heads, doing the self-congratulatory thing, tearing apart games that don't fit their definition of the right level of puzzle, the right level of thinky, the perfection of their design. It's like, that game's got randomness in it. It has sloppiness to it. Its progression falls apart here. Over here, it makes a decision for its world and story and experience, but that mechanical change for that small piece, it lessens the overall thinkiness of it. And in the process of tearing those things down and building up other things and looking at this somewhat self-referential body of work, everyone in that pile is struggling to get their games signed by publishers or releasing games with the most refined design principles ever yet seen, blinding Oppenheimer levels of genius to an audience of 100 gamers who buy a copy, maybe 20 of which refund. The concern is that in the genres we can call the thinky batch of genres, those things are popping off. Almost every week we see something else with thinky traits manage to reach audience in an effective manner. It has clear levels of cause and effect, evolving gameplay systems, really rewarding rule sets and loops that change and grow, and that the player in the process of engaging with them changes and grows to meet new challenges. All of those things that you can call objectively good game design, and certainly the core of a thinky game, those games are doing well all the time, and yet things in this thinky genre batch struggle. And we have to ask ourselves why. And I think it is because we build, in far too many cases, thinky games for other thinky developers rather than for players. If a game would be better because it has randomness in it, because it has sloppiness in its overall design, we fear our own crowd, the people who, at the end of the day, we don't serve. We serve our players. So Strange Scaffold has been working in thinky-adjacent spaces for a long time, and I've noticed a common element for our work and that of others, which is we do not use any thinky branding around our stuff. We might say something that's an adjacent tag, something like automation. We might say we're working in an economics or forex genre, but we specifically don't market to thinky audiences with thinky terms, which is a damn shame because it is such a wonderful, vibrant, thoughtful community. But it's because thinky is digging itself a genre hole that looks more like a grave. If we are to expand the audience of thinky, if we are to take people who love traits of thinky games but would not describe themselves as a thinky gamer and certainly wouldn't describe themselves as a fan of thinky games, if we're to convert that, if we're going to change that, we have to open ourselves not to making the objective best game, the representative of the genre, the thing that pulls from maybe the game that got us started in the first place. We have to ask, why does the player care in the first place? Because good game design alone will not do that. If we build experiences that meaningfully take the elements that players already love about the work we're doing and really at every level ask, does this bring our players something new? Does this serve the best version of this game and not the one that's going to get the most acclaim from our peers? We're going to make, I'll go so far as to say, better games, as well as games that end up changing our players and our peers in the process. I hope that is in us, because if not, we're going to keep seeing Thinky swirl around the same hole over and over and over again, the same way it is now. Thank you. And feel free to shout at me in comments or internet things or ask questions. I'm happy to discuss this because, again, it's something we got to fix.
I love it. Harsh truths. We all need to hear them. I love it. Thank you, Xalavier. There's not a huge amount of time, but there's a little bit of time for questions. And so I did see something come up in the chats that wasn't framed as a question, but I think I could reframe it as one. So Plushlola saying, I'm concerned that the things that we really love about Thinky Games are just inherently too niche, and if we want to become more popular for general audience, we need to sacrifice them. Do you have thoughts on that statement?
Absolutely. The first thing that jumps to mind when we say this is, again, games with our traits are already popping off and doing well. And if what we love about a Thinky game is some elements of its design, you can absolutely create a story or aesthetic wrapper or overall framing of that experience that reaches players, that tells them that this is a special and unique game. The most concerning thing, again, about Thinky Games is also its greatest strength, which is its community. We look at each other's games and give each other feedback to make yet tighter, yet more self-referential puzzle experiences. Oh, I saw that puzzle done by someone else in a different game. I saw this mechanic used by someone else. And that emphasis on originality, when originality doesn't sell copies of games, and originality is not what births the best holistic experiences, either for players or for what it means to us as developers to build games and have a fun time enjoying them or enjoying the experience of developing them. All that comes to mind as saying, I am not concerned about the things that we enjoy about Thinky Games being too niche for players. What does concern me is the idea that we have, again, created such a limited definition of Thinky Games that we keep shrinking that down and rejecting anything that does not fit into that, or judging it so harshly that when people walk by our door, kind of like a local game shop, they say, oh, I guess that isn't for me. And they miss the wide range of experiences being developed right now that they would perhaps fall in love with.
I like your reference to self-referential games. There's many times when I'm recommending games to people, and I'm like, "Oh, you probably shouldn't play that one because it's kind of more of an inside joke for the Thinky Games community." It's like, okay, so that means its audience is, a few hundred people.
And again, you could spin that inside joke into being something that is more than that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
all too often, the pattern I see is that it doesn't. It's we make a game that is a inside joke around, haha, remember this one moment in one level in a different Thinky game, and everybody claps. And meanwhile, no players arrive, and players are our audience. They're the people we perform for.
Absolutely.
If we aren't serving them, then it's like a tree falling in the woods. It makes no sound and it does no cool thing. It could be doing a kickflip and no one would see it.
So actually, a lot of questions have come through, and we're not going to have time to get to them all. Let's try and get to one more.
I'll try to do a lightning round.
Would you say games like Hypnospace Outlaw, Immortality, Chance of Senna should be goals then? Or those the kinds of things you're thinking about as Thinky games that have reached those audiences?
They have you can clearly see Thinky appeals in each one.
Yep.
Each one is a thoughtful experience. Each one has cause and effect. Each one is building an experience, has puzzles or logic relationships that evolve to a degree.
Mm.
I think that those are pretty good watchwords. And to refer a little bit to Strange Scaffold's own work, Life Eater, a horror fantasy kidnapping sim, certainly has a lot of thinky elements to it, but so much of that experience is, and the reason, unfortunately, why I believe it's captured so many people's imaginations on social media and in the press and so on, leading ahead of its release, is because we aren't trying to build something for thinky developers or building something for players. We're saying, what is the story and experience that we need? And sometimes we're making choices that compromise its thinkiness or compromise the perfection, quote unquote, of its design in favor of what's the best version of this game that we know can reach people.
Thank you for that answer. Was that a question there? Interesting. Well, so from Corey in the chat, about how you define better for yourself or your studio, since you see the puzzle world as judging it wrongly. Does it simply mean more popular sales? Is that better? I guess the question is about, like, is it just what angle you come at it from and what your goals are to achieve?
If we're going to use the term better game, we have to define what someone is trying to reach in the first place. If you just want to explore design, you can be making the most self-referential thinky game ever. And if, as long as your time and budget aligns with just accomplishing that goal, you might make the game that inspires someone else to do something that will literally change video games. That's the power that thinky games have and have had in the past. However, if we're talking about better in commercial sense, it's like, well, if you need to make back $200,000 in sales on this game, and it is an in-joke for 10 people, if the rest of the experience is not built to reach outside of that circle and deliver something unique and compelling, then it's not going to fulfill your goals. It might be you don't necessarily need to sell copies, you just need attention, or it might be promotion for your next thing. Aligning the rest of your production cycle, this goes to wider Strange Scaffold principles, but the entire motto of the studio is better, faster, cheaper, and healthier. And that word better being really an operative for aligning a game to the scope and the situation and budget and timeline it's been assigned is so important to us. And so we do have games that we've built. We built one game in a week that did really, really well. We've had another game that was built in 3 years and that did really, really well. And in each case, we just said we have to make all of these factors, including the business case for the game, align so that we can be more creative.
Thank you so much. I think that's probably the last question we're going to be able to take. But it's wonderful to be able to have a controversial talk as part of our lineup. Thank you so much. I'm sure there'll be more discussion about it. There's lots of discussion going on. Like, this is probably the most active the YouTube chat has been this whole time.
I'm sorry / thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Xalavier.
Thank you so much for having me.